So hey guys, I'm Bashir and welcome to In The Mix. In a world so determined to paint us in a negative light, we're here to reclaim the news and try and paint ourselves in a positive light. But I'm not here alone today and I'm joined by two very special guests, so I'm going to pass over to them to allow them to introduce themselves. So welcome to the show today, guys.
Hiya, hello.
Hi.
What's your name and what do you do?
My name's Jean. I work at M6 as an AV pioneer, so I work on TV team.
Hi, I'm Katie. I recently graduated this year and I also work at M6, but I'm on the digital team.
How long have you been here and what's the most exciting thing so far?
Exciting thing? Maybe this? I don't know.
Well, thank you. You guys are too complimentary.
The only thing I can think of.
What about you, Katie?
I've been here 3 months. We've been to a couple of cool events.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
Clearly you're my favourite.
Yeah, sorry. This is pretty cool as well, but yeah, no, we've been to some cool events, seen some famous people.
And then Bashir. Well, hashtag awkward. Well, okay, well, jumping straight into the news. We're focusing on positive stories this week, actually. And like I said in the beginning, there's so much negativity out there, especially about young people, that we need to shout from the rooftops when we come across those positive stories. And according to our research, almost half of 16 to 25-year-olds feel that they're negatively portrayed in the media. And the media is responsible for how a lot of people get their information. Jean, over to you. What do you think about that number? It is quite a big number.
It is a big number, but I also, when I hear that number, I'm not surprised at all. Mm-hmm. I think the reason why is that being, I guess, bracketed in that same sort of age group, you kind of see why that is. A lot of breaking news about young people will always kind of steer towards the negative. There's very much there's a lot of patronising as well when it comes to sort of young people. I mean, I know some incredible people who have done amazing things who are my age, but you don't really hear about their stories. And I think that needs to change before that number becomes, is overturned essentially.
Have you guys, either of you guys, heard of a guy called Joe Landolina?
No.
No? Well, I don't find that too surprising. At the age of 17, came up with something called Vetigel. And Vetigel is like an algae-like substance that's used to treat wounds. And it just, you know what I mean, really stops bleeding in a matter of seconds. So what's really inspiring about Joe, who has come up with something so revolutionary, but we don't know a single thing about him. We're not getting those stories. And it's not just Joe's story, but stories like Joe. And there's people up and down, not just this country, but around the world that are doing amazing things. So why do you feel like we don't hear about them?
When you're looking at news stories that are successful, that you see in 6 o'clock news, will typically be shocking. And those kind of stories don't fit into that mould. And it's the idea that those stories perhaps should come through different mediums.
And Katie, to you, in terms of, do you think stories like that, and if we were to hear stories like that, do you think it can encourage other young people to go out there and really achieve their dreams and do what they're passionate about?
Absolutely. I think at first you might be like, oh God, I'm not doing anything in my life. All these amazing people who are younger than me are coming up with these amazing ideas. But it also shows to you that it's achievable, and it's not just for older generations to be going and coming up with these amazing new ideas. People our age can also do it, and some of the best ideas at the moment are coming up from really young people. So I do think if it received more coverage, then definitely it would inspire a lot more people.
Over 75% of 16 to 25-year-olds think that the way that the media covers them influences the way that the older generation views them. So, more so, is it important that accurate, reflective stories are given out there in the media so that the older generation aren't really worried about us or scared of us or crossing the streets when they see us, where 75% of 16 to 25-year-olds feel like that's where a lot of the older generation get their perceptions of us?
Yeah, I definitely think that's something to be worked on. But I don't think it's just news that causes that. I think it's already a mindset there that the news kind of amplifies further. And I think a lot of it comes down, there's quite a, I feel like in this between these two generations, there is ever more generational divide. And I think it comes with a little bit of resentment with younger generations as to, you know, policies, etc., that have impacted us.
I mean, building upon that then, and because as Jean just said, there's something very inherent there, there's something that's underlying. And then, so I'm trying to think, what could it be where people, especially the older generation, don't view us accurately, and they have this, you know what I mean, misperception of us. And then you've touched upon policies, and like I said, often we see policies that favour one group more than another, and especially some politics now, especially in the past few years, we've seen the politics of division, the politics of envy, as opposed to coming together and just saying, actually, we feel like this is wrong. It's saying, oh, why should young people pay for the pensions of these people? Why should the older generation pay for the tuition of younger people? And I don't know if you've seen that, you know what I mean, this us and them and this and that, and it just allows a lot of the people at the top, you know what I mean, to get away scot-free. So I don't know, in terms of, do you feel like that sort of stuff plays you know what I mean, a role in the way that the older people view the younger people?
Yeah, definitely. There's massive divides. And also, they grew up in a completely different environment to have what we've grown up in. We've grown up in the social media generation. And I think there's just that disconnect between the two. Like, older generations don't understand. Like, they think, oh, we're always on our phone. Yeah. We haven't really experienced what they've experienced. And there is just that disconnect. And I think that is massively amplified by the media and the news. And I also just think at the end of the day, older people do like to patronise young people. It's just kind of inherent in their nature because they've lived longer and they've had more experience, and it's quite easy just to say they're naive, they haven't had experiences. So I think, like Jean was saying, the news amplifies that, and it amplifies that segmentation.
So the question I would like to pose to both of you then is, news, would people, and this is maybe a controversial question, but would people really want to hear about the good stuff? Do you know what I mean? Do you want to open it up and read about, oh, this one's won the lottery, this one's done this, you know what I mean? Is that newsworthy? Is it wrong for media organisations to peddle the bad stuff because maybe the bad stuff just sells better than the good stuff? And would you actually get tired of reading the good stories day in and day out?
I think it's really interesting because I do think people switch on 6 o'clock news to see the stories, and even though it's terrible, that is what they're paying attention to. And I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. If like the more minor stories come in the news, I can see myself switching off. But I also think it's equally important to create. We live in a world of bad news and negativity at the moment, and I think even just a few stories in the news, like even if people don't paying attention, it's not all gloom. It's still bringing a positive aspect to it. So I do think it is important that we need to start bringing more positive stories. I
think with the world in such a depressing state, I think we all need that pick-me-up, do you know what I mean? You know, sometimes it can just lift your spirits actually when you hear about a good story or those feel-good stories. It's like, oh, actually.
Yeah, for sure, because I think there was a point where I just stopped, you know, subscribing to like newspaper apps because I just couldn't deal with the alerts anymore.
Just so relentless. No, we really want good stories, and hopefully there are people at home, do you know what I mean, who are going to take our message, you know what I mean, to the masses and saying, we're tired of being portrayed in the wrong way. We're tired of, you know what I mean, being painted in very bad colours. Because you know what? The group of 16 to 25-year-olds can actually do an immense amount of good, actually. And we are a force for good. So I hope you guys are listening at home. And any politicians or media that are listening as well, we got our eyes on you, okay? So our research showed that 75% of 16 to 25-year-olds feel like the negative media portrayed about them really influences how older people view them. And is it important that there are more positive stories in the media?
Yeah, I definitely think you need to show those positive stories because otherwise, like, how else would people know about them? And like you said, there's a lot of negative out there. You could find so many negative stories. So you need to definitely cut through to people using those kind of positive stories. I know if I was scrolling through a news feed, I'd want to see a bit more fun there as well, because I don't want to just see doom and gloom. So yeah, you're right in saying that it's more important.
So Katie, do you think then, so that's going to be a very good question, do you think then that there needs to be willingness to look for it? Because like you're saying is, there's good out there, but you need to go and look for it. Do you know what I mean? It might not come knocking on your door. So do you feel like media or whoever it is has to go and seek out those stories the same way they seek out all the dirty secrets of the celebs and things like that? So do you feel like media really should seek those good stories out?
Definitely. And I think now as well, we're in such a connected world, and it is easy to find those stories, just like a share on Facebook, and you can find out about it. So there's not really any excuse why you can't go out and dig the stories up. And there's almost a threat of people becoming completely disillusioned with the news altogether if there's no positive in there. If people are just reading like negative stories, and people might be like, "Suck it, I'm not going to read the news anymore at all." So I do think you need to have a little bit of optimism.
Moving on to our next news story, Jamie Oliver, also known as the Naked Chef, get your minds out of the gutter now, I mean that's genuinely his nickname, has banned his 14-year-old daughter from posting selfies on social media. And so some people think that's actually an extreme measure. What are your thoughts on Jamie Oliver actually banning his daughter from putting up any selfies on social media?
Well, it's interesting for one. Him being out there is what is making his money, and you know, etc. But to be honest, there is a certain degree of. I do slightly agree with him. I have a younger sister myself. She's 9, and I've said to my parents, you know, she's not going on social media until about the age of 14, and I'm not letting you let her on it at all, because I'm so conscious that sometimes, and I'm not saying that social media is all bad, there's so many good things. If you kind of introduce it too early on, it can be a cause of insecurity. The thing is, we have insecurities, and I think sometimes that doesn't help. And it's just a case of being at the right age to appreciate that and be really secure with yourself, etc. So I understand where he's coming from, but maybe banning selfies is a bit of a, I guess, strict measure in that regard, given his background.
Is she able to make her own decisions, or is he right to control what she posts online?
In many ways, I do think he has got reasoning behind why he's done it. At that age, there's such an image that a lot of girls aspire to look like these days, and social media is everywhere. Like, you could scroll through and see all these girls posing on Instagram and just think, I need to look like that. And at that age, I think that is quite destructive. And like Jean said, insecurities are always there. I do think it's important that they have their independence. And it's a shame, because I think social media can be used for so many great things.
Is it part of growing up? Is it because we've all, I mean, I think most people may have had taunts about the way they look, and people, I think most people might not like certain parts of their body. I genuinely look back at some fashion choices that I made when I was younger, and I mean, I really cringe, right? Even our parents, I'm sure they felt that they were really fashionable when they were younger, but have you seen some of the clothes that they were wearing back then? So is it just a part of growing up that you just explore yourself? You know what I mean? And like I said, you explore yourself, your identity, and you just throw it out there. And like I said, it's part of learning, it's part of growing up.
When I was growing up, I remember having a lot of sort of issues with body confidence and just image more generally. And I didn't actually have any social media up until about the age of 18. So there's definitely something to be said there. Social media can be good, but there are certain points, like Katie said, that isolation can come into it. So if you're feeling, oh, I don't look like all these girls, or I don't look like this certain person, I see all these sort of photoshopped photos across the web that look this way, I don't look like that. It can be a cause of harm. And when you're at that age, you become so caught up in that. It just takes time to be secure in yourself and to think, actually, I don't really care what that person's saying about me, or I don't care how I'm perceived. I'm just going to post it, or I'm just going to let people know about this because that's me.
Is it a part of growing up then? Sometimes through our toughest experiences and our down moments, do we begin to love ourselves and appreciate ourselves. You know what I mean? And like I said, I don't think anyone, or most people when they're younger, don't really go out there and think they're God's gift.
I'm 23 and I've definitely grown out of my insecurities, but sometimes I'll be on Instagram scrolling along and I sometimes see like a picture of a model who's beautiful and I'm like, oh, I want that body. And like these thoughts start coming into my head and then I have to put the phone down and be like, no, they've probably taken 1,000 photos, there's photoshopped, or just like, you never know. And also it doesn't matter.
Body confidence and image is really important, especially to our generation. We met a brave young girl called Alice who didn't let a set of unfortunate circumstances get the better of her. Our team went out to meet her to hear her story.
I was really enjoying my work until it became such a habit. It has put me in like unstable situations. I just wanted everything to turn off. It was such a weird experience, something that I went through that I really couldn't explain because I know it happened, but everything inside of me was just not there. So I lost my hair from alopecia in April 2011. It happened so fast. I was only 15. We went to the hospital in Geneva where I saw, in French it's une tricologue, which is like specialized in hair and skin. And she realized that my hair loss had actually started a little bit before because my hairline back here had gone up, which was obviously not something that I had noticed. I loved my hair. I actually used to do like modeling for my hair for L'Oreal and stuff. So that was really, really confusing for doctors to not really be able to tell me what was going on. They just said, oh, it's kind of common for people to have like bald patches. It's alopecia, but not severe. In order for me to be comfortable with it, I had to get help from other people to help me feel comfortable with it. So it would start with like asking people to rub sunscreen on my head and just making it like a normal thing, like involving my head in everyday life. Modeling is definitely a way of dealing with it because I became like something beautiful to an artistic eye, which very quickly helped me to be confident and to love myself. Well, I actually started kickboxing back in Geneva after my hair loss, which just helped me let it all out. The energy that it gave me after and all that happiness, I was just like pumped with good vibes and happiness. My name is Alice Urel Mamia.
How do you think you would cope with something like that in terms of something very dramatic in your image just changing?
When it initially happened and it was so dramatic, I just don't know how I'd be able to see people who had seen me before and then think, what have you done? Like what's happened, and you have to explain it. I think for her to endure that takes a lot of resilience.
It's the deviation from one thing to another that you yourself may find hard to understand. So to try and communicate that to someone else is a challenge in itself, because you're saying, I'm coming to terms with it myself.
And then someone point it out to you.
And it's like, yes, I know. And it's like, oh, what happened to you? You know what I mean? And like you said, having to tell people repeatedly, how do you think you would cope with it? And do you think you would have the same strength as her?
I think it would be serious. It would be so tough. And I admire her so much. And I don't know if I would have the same strength and resilience, but at the same time, I think she's such a great example of someone who's just taken it in her stride and like created something really positive out of it. And like I have faith that when other people like get confronted with these life challenges, that we could also have that same strength. And she's a great role model, and I think you don't really know how you're going to react till it happens to you, and having those influences around you is so important.
If something, you know, quite like Katie said, something life-changing happens to you, you can flip it around and take it as a positive and think, actually, that's what makes me unique. And that's what she did with creating these artistic stills with these, you know, photographers. She took it and said, this is what makes me different in the modelling.
Our show was brought to you by The Mix, a charity that supports under 25-year-olds to find the strength and resilience within themselves. If you are affected by any of the issues discussed today, then feel free to get in touch with The Mix. Their details can be found in the description below or on a ticker right here. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we wouldn't want to leave you without a good hearty laugh to take you into the weekend. Wow, anyways, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to cut that out.
No, that means you laugh.
No, because I haven't read it yet. Okay, so I lost my job at the bank. Wow, sorry, I can't do this.
You're terrible at this.
Oh, this kitten's dying in the world. That's so sorry. Come on, Bashir. I lost my job at the bank on my very first day. A woman asked me to check her balance, so I pushed her over. You heartless person. Yeah, you're really heartless. Okay.
My cat is recovering from a massive stroke. What did I laugh at?
Interesting.
Go on then.
Can you give me a second, please? Today, a man knocked on my door and asked for a small donation towards a local swimming pool. I gave him a glass of water.
I was raised as an only child, which really annoyed my sister.
That's a bit rude.